Yes, we are live now.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum all, welcome. Again we are on the third week of our reading about Ramadan and almost on the halfway of observing the Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, praise to Allah. It's joyful, we're enjoying it, inshallah, all together. At the same time, there's always little regret that if we could have done enough. Inshallah, these readings hopefully will help us, will assist us to observe the benefit from Ramadan more and more. This week, inshallah, we will be together with Colin Turner from Durham and Mustafa Tuna from North Carolina, brother Mustafa. Inshallah, I will be trying to assisting them in this reading. So we continue this chapter from 29th letter, the second section from the Risale-i Nur Collection for those who want to follow up from their books. Inshallah. Of course, this is again reminding us at the very beginning of the chapter, Ramadan is the month of Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. It was the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was bestowed from on high as a guidance unto man and as self-evident proof of that guidance and as the standard to discern true from false. So inshallah, may Allah increase our understanding and open our hearts to the Quran, truths of the Quran, and help us to bring the practice of Quran into our lives, inshallah. So we are on the fourth proof. Before starting, Colin Hocam or Mustafa Hocam, anything that you want to remind from the previous weeks that we want to focus on?
No, not really.
So inshallah, I want to start reading the fourth point. One instance of wisdom in fasting in Ramadan with respect to training the instinctual soul is as follows. The instinctual soul, or lower nafs, wants to be free and independent and considers itself to be thus. The nafs wants to be free and independent and considers itself to be thus. According to the dictates of its nature, it even desires an imaginary lordship and to act as it pleases, a rububiyyah. It even desires an imaginary rububiyyah and to act as it pleases. It does not want to admit that it is being sustained and trained through innumerable bounties. Does not want to admit that it's being sustained and trained through innumerable bounties, especially if it possesses worldly wealth and power, and if heedlessness also encourages it, ghafla also encourages it, it will devour Allah's bounties like a usurping, thieving animal. So before going to the second slide, the first sentence says, nafs wants to be free and independent and considers itself to be thus. So isn't it so? Isn't it free to go? What restricts it? So what's the limits of the nafs? Can we a little bit talk about our nafs? Colin Hocam or Mustafa Hocam, who wants to step in?
Yeah, I'll wait for Colin Hoca first.
No, please, you go, Mustafa.
No, I'll wait.
This will never happen then if we wait for each other. I think, the clarion call of modern man is freedom, liberation, independence. And this is to a certain extent understandable because we are created by a creator who is free and independent. And if we are the full length mirror reflecting all of his names, then, the freedom of the sovereign creator is something that we aspire to. We can understand it a little bit because we are given if you like, we're given a semblance of freedom or the appearance of freedom. But in fact, we are tied, in every possible way. We are not free as human beings. Our freedom is really an illusion when you consider that we are dependent on every single thing in the universe. Everything is interdependent, which means, in a sense, dependent on each other. And because everything is interdependent, the whole of the creation is dependent on other than itself. We've talked about this very, very at great detail and many times before. We consider ourselves to be free, but in fact, in every sense of the word, we are dependent. We are dependent on every breath. If we want to be free in our lives, we have to breathe, and that breath is a dependent breath. We are dependent when we want to walk and talk and move about on the movement of our neurons in our brain, and those are dependent on something other than themselves. So at every step of the way, we are dependent. How then can we claim that we're free? That freedom is an illusion. It's a beautiful illusion, but it's an illusion.
I
Yeah, Mustafa.
I did this in a podcast last week, and I didn't think of it at that time, but it's coming to me right now. So it's open to consideration. But the word that Colin Hojam translate as training, I use disciplining. It doesn't matter; both are the same. But the word is terbiye, and it does mean training, disciplining in Turkish. But I'm wondering if Ustad has used it in this subtle point, in this point, to mean nurturing, and if so, anything that needs nurturing by definition cannot be independent because it needs nurturing in order to exist, right? And the very word instinctual soul, nafs is a beautiful translation for instinct, for nafs, that also indicates that freedom is not an option for the human being, because one who thinks that he is free of, let's say, government powers or the pressures of society or whatever bonds that one might have, if one were to possibly strip himself off of all of those, then what is left is slavery to the instinctual soul, right? We are never free in that sense, because that instinctual soul, the lower soul, has all these desires and urges and pushes that if we think we are free from everything else, we will be completely submitting to. So the question is not, whether we can be free or not. The question is, what do we submit to? Do we submit to God, who, as it will be established here, is the nurturer of ourselves, including our, lower instinctual souls? Or do we think that we are free, but in reality, we are submitting to either the instinctual soul or, the world, the whisperings of Satan, right? We are never isolated. The core we, what we call we, the spirit, the heart, whatever it is that we can, imagine, not separate, but imagine as separate from the instinctual soul, right? That can never be isolated from these desires, pushes, urges. Therefore, it can never be free. But it wants to be. That's a different question.
I think
there's a, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in response to what Mustafa said, I think that we are free to choose the prison that suits us the best.
Yeah.
Because we're always in a prison, in a sense. Because, as you say, if we don't worship the single great compassionate creator, our Rab, our true Rab, then everything for us is going to be a Rab. We're going to latch onto everything else. We're going to worship everything else. And worship is being tied, and being an abd is being tied. It means being tied to something. To be tied consciously to Allah is the greatest freedom, but to be tied unconsciously to everything else is the greatest incarceration.
So I'm trying to understand this. Most of the time I say, I want this, I want that, I desire this, I need to have this. So I guess we need to analyze this, right? That this is not always the whole existence of mine, but it's my lower nafs, my instinctual soul talking there. So running for the instant pleasures, it's not always in his senses, kind of tricking me or misleading me. So there are other things that I have, maybe my heart, my soul, that my ruh, spirit, that can understand and credit that I'm depending on somebody else. I'm not completely free, but this part of mine, this nafs, kind of misinterpreting this free will, the free will we have. So it should be a purpose behind it. It should have been given to me for a purpose, and this nafs is taking it wrongfully. It's a kind of thieving that ability we have, in a way, as far as I understand. So do you want to reflect a little more, Colin Hocam? Can you open this a little bit for us?
I think the problem is causality. We think that causality is actually something valid and something which is actually there in reality. And it's not. Everything has to be created momentaneously, from second to second. Causes cannot create. And because of this illusion, we think that we have some power of creativity, that we can actually do things. But at every step, our freedom is stymied, it's circumscribed by divine creation. And if we were to understand that, that actually liberates us, if we really want to think about it. But we think that we have a freedom because causes often seem to go our way. We will something or wish something, and Allah creates it for us. We don't see that divine connection. We've cut that connection. And we think that we are actually putting things into effect. We are actually affecting things. When you couple that with our freedom of choice, and we do actually, from one respect, have a very real freedom of choice, which is something abstract and relational and relative. When you couple that, it gives this illusion that we are sovereign agents and we are able to function of our own accord. But if we actually break it down and unpack it, we have absolutely no power and ability whatsoever. Power and ability is created as and when we need it. And if we were to understand that, we would actually see that we are in the hands of one who, as Mustafa said, is making tarbiyah of us all the time. And when you are able to, devolve all of your worries and all of your burdens onto that compassionate creator, that is actually opening up a world of freedom. But we just don't realize it. It's an illusion. Freedom is an absolute illusion.
So saving ourselves from the dominance of nafs kind of gives us the freedom. Otherwise, it's the first oppressor we have, in a way. Can I say that? So the closest one, or the one that always interferes in our things and then try to kind of in a way mislead us for just instant pleasures, have no ability to consider what is it about, how it is independent, how it's constricted in many ways. It misleads us, and it's kind of the first oppressor or first one that kind of captures us for
I think you
those.
said closest enemy, didn't you? You said closest enemy, and that's quite a good appellation to give to, you know, this lower self, our closest enemy.
Yeah. And the worst one too, the, you know, as the prophetic tradition says, "Ada aduwwuka nafsuka allati bayna janbayk," right? The worst enemy of yours is the one that's between your two sides, that as the Prophet ﷺ said. The problem is the lower soul does not know its own interests either. So it is not a rational being. You know, in economy, when they founded the whole science on the conception that human beings are rational beings, right? They made a big mistake, and we are seeing the consequences of that. You know, as we live in capitalism or socialism, doesn't matter. It had the same problem there. The intellect can see relatively far, depending on, you know, the quality of the intellect, right? The heart, the imagination can see, you know, relatively far, but the lower soul is confined to here and now. So it only knows what it not even want may not be the right word here, because it may, like, it seems to, at least to me, it seems to include some level of rationalization. It only desires what it desires at the moment, and that oftentimes is not actually good for it in the big picture. So the human being is this larger being that has the intellect, the conscience, the heart, the imagination, the, you know, partial choice, etc., etc. And, you know, we need to bring all of those together under the you know, perhaps the command of the intellect, and be able to tell the instinctual soul, hold on one second, you think you know, but you don't know. You just desire, and that desire is actually leading you or misleading you, and therefore leading you to, you know, a pit of fire. You know, come to your senses. If you have any senses here and there might be some senses. We need to, you know, pull that up and put you together. But there is this constant struggle that has to happen within the existence of each and every human being, so that the human being can free itself from, as you said, Vaikarabi, the oppression of the instinctual soul. If that effort is not put in place, then we capitulate to the instinctual soul, and it misleads us.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way of looking at it. You know, if we don't ride our nafs rides us. There can only be one boss, and most of us think with our nafs. You know, we think with our instinctual soul rather than thinking with our intellect, and our intellect is not in our brain; it's in our heart, in actual fact. So, you know, if you don't ride your nafs will ride you, and that's what it's there to do. It's there to whip us forward. It's there to motivate us, to galvanize us, to drive us forward, actually. So it actually does have an important part to play, but it has to be controlled. You know, you can't just be driven forward, you know, haphazardly, you know, and most of the time that we acquiesce to the desires of our nafs, those desires have not been mediated by intellectual introspection, which means we just blindly go forward. And most of the time, you know, it ends up to our detriment.
Well said, well said. So in a way, if the nafs, it works like this half-conscious child, and should be trained. But I guess the most grievous mistake that the nafs puts us into is we start thinking that we are really free. We are really free to go. You know, whatever we choose, this is our decision. This is our life. This is our existence. This is our responsibility, and we are good to go with that. And even in the present time, I guess it's opens the door for a lot of trouble for us. All those breakdowns and hopelessness that we have in our lives. When we start thinking that, okay, we can do anything and everything, this nafs is enough for us, this free will enough for us, thought, I guess it's also a disaster. Even in the present time, we don't need to wait for any consequences in the afterlife, but here and now it puts us into a lot of trouble that the nafs deceives us, thinking that we are really free. Because most of the time when we consider a mu'min, right, with an unbeliever, even we desire something a lot, we need to go like, oh, is this the best for me? Oh Allah, open the door that is really beneficial for me. So we are kind of stepping carefully. We should be stepping carefully when we are using our free will. But on the other side, there's kind of this, as Colin Hocam said, haphazard rush to whatever looks beneficial to me. Can I define it like that? Colin Hocam, please go ahead. You were saying something.
No, I just wanted someone to help me to locate the blind spot in nafs, because there is a freedom that we have, and it's actually, if we unpack it, it's an absolute freedom. And that freedom is the freedom in theory, and it's only a theoretical freedom, but it can actually at times exist, and that is the freedom to choose between two options. But the options are created for us. So why does the nafs think that it has sovereign agency when every scenario that it chooses from among, the different scenarios and the different paths that we can go, either X or Y, those are created in front of it. And then it chooses, and its choice 99 times out of 100 isn't free anyway. But that theoretical freedom, the freedom to choose between X and Y, is there. But the options from amongst which we choose are created for us. The scenarios are created for us. So we're not free in that sense. Why is there a blind spot? Why cannot nafs see this? That it's choosing between options which are created for it.
Heedlessness helps.
or hinders. Yeah. Is it heedlessness that blinds us? Yeah.
Yeah. Heedlessness helps the nafs to deceive us.
Right.
As you mentioned at the beginning, the proper understanding of causes and effects and causality, lies at the heart of this. The nafs is not that smart. It cannot grasp that reality, that it is not causing anything, that everything is created momentously, as you said, from second to second. It itself is being created from moment to moment. But its sight is short. It cannot see that. And it is easy to assume otherwise. Therefore, it's easy to assume otherwise here and now. In the long run, if it were to see the bigger picture, it would see that this is actually the most difficult thing to do. But when it is confined to here and now, then heedlessness comes to its help, and it's stuck there. It cannot go further. It's almost like an automatic thing. Is it like a wound up toy? You wind it and put on the floor, and it keeps moving, and it is going to keep moving according to what it hits, but without a telos, without a purpose, an objective, and strategy to get there. These are not within its capacity. That is why we need the intellect. And as you know, the word for intellect, aql, apparently comes from this word that the rope that was used to tie the feet of the camel, so that the camel does not go haphazardly wherever it wants to go. If the camel needs to stay somewhere, you need something to tie it, right? So the nafs needs to be therefore tied, controlled. It is not free, but it does think, it does assume that it is free. What we need to understand then is that we are not just our instinctual soul. We are more than our instinctual soul. Once we recognize that, then we can start to contemplate, think about the other faculties that we have and start to use them too.
And of course, heedlessness is something which is encouraged at the macro level from, everything in the advertisement industry, is basically, it's capitalizing on our ignorance. It's capitalizing on our lethargy. It's capitalizing on our, inability to think properly for ourselves, on our irrationality. If economics is built on the premise that we are rational animals, advertising is built on the premise that we are irrational animals and that we'll go for anything. We are, like Mustafa mentioned, the wind-up toy that you put on the floor and it goes and it hits something, it falls over, gets up, moves to another obstacle, hits it, gets up, goes again, and thinks this is wonderful, this is freedom. It's having a good time. And yet, at every corner, at every obstacle, it should realize, what are you doing? Where's your rationale? What's the rationale behind this? Why are you not thinking? And I think that modern society tries to foster this, it tries to encourage this, so that then we acquiesce to our leaders, to the state, to the establishment, to the powers that be, without thinking too much.
Yeah, just a short anecdote here. Hamza Yusuf tells this. Apparently one day he went to Las Vegas, got off the plane, walking out and going down an escalator, and in a very conspicuous place where everybody going down the escalator can see, and that's going to be the first thing that's welcoming to you to Las Vegas. It says, give in to temptation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the whole advertising industry is built on greed, on jealousy, on envy, on sadness, on loneliness, and on temptation. That's how it draws us in.
So we are going a little further than this freedom, and Ustad talks here about an imaginary rububiyyah, lordship, talking about acting as it pleases. So what is this rububiyyah? We know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rabb of the universe and he runs everything. So what kind of rububiyyah is this? What is this nafs doing here? Before talking about the purpose of it, how can we understand this? What kind of lordship is this? Just one thing that came to my mind, for example, when Fir'aun was talking in the Quran, as far as I can understand, he wasn't saying that, oh, I created the heaven and the earth for you, but he was saying, Ana rabbukum al-ala. So what does the nafs says here? It has a lordship now, kind of.
Because he was feeding his people and he thought he was feeding his people. As you say, he wasn't saying that I've created the heavens and the earth. That would have been ridiculous. But if you are the leader of a family, then you are the one who is earning the money. You are the one that is clothing and feeding them. You are the one that is sending them to school. You are the one that's training them. And even before we get to, a sphere of rububiyyah, our personal sphere of rububiyyah, I am the one who creates my own destiny. I am the one who creates my own actions. It all comes back, I think, to causality and our inability to understand the true nature of the order in the universe, that the order, is caused momentaneously by an all-wise and omniscient creator who makes tarbiyah of us because we are in need. We are existentially impoverished. We are existentially needy at every second. And because we are taught and we are encouraged not to think like that, we think that what we say goes and that we actually have agency, that our hands are able to create things, that our mind is able to think for itself and put the thoughts there and initiate things. We are the Rabb of our own self. This is what we believe, you know, and we are encouraged to believe that. We're impelled to believe it, actually. So what can we do? You know, we're up against very fierce enemies. You know, we're talking about the social engineers, we're talking about peer pressure, we're talking about the establishment, political will, all of these things which encourage this state of heedlessness.
So there is this Fir'aun oppressing us, but we are not even aware of him, kind of.
No, because it speaks to the Fir'aun in our own selves. You know, we can't blame the Fir'aun outside, but the Fir'aun outside resonates with us. You know, that's why they say that everyone who is abused becomes an abuser. You know, we are abused by the system, but then we go on to abuse ourselves by believing the hype, by believing the lie, you know, that vital lie that we actually have some kind of sovereign agency and power.
Related to this, very interesting, you know, in Quran, it's repeated many times. We are zalim, we are oppressors to our nafs, to ourselves, actually. It's not anybody out there, but first of all, defining ourselves as oppressor because of this particular attitude that we did.
Yeah, I mean, each time you know, I have a key in my pocket. Each time I go to a door that's familiar and put the key in the lock and turn it, it opens. I assume that this is my house. I assume that I am the Lord of this house. I assume that I have control in this house, right? Because each time I put the key in the lock, it opens. But in reality, who put the key in my pocket, who built the house, who is you know, maintaining things in the house, each time I incline to speak and open my mouth and, you know, move air from my lungs through my throat, voice comes out, some sound comes out. I assume that I own this sound. Each time I make this sound into the microphone, it somehow goes through and I get responses from everybody else out there as if they hear me, right? So I assume that I'm making the sound. I own the microphone. I own the computer. I'm in control, right? But I'm not. And Zoom has taught that in the past year several times. Sometimes you think that maybe right now may be the case, right? Sometimes you think that people are hearing you are speaking and the voice is going through. So you're in charge and you're in control, but you are not. Right? So maybe Ramadan is one of those moments when things, you know, come to a halt. Voice doesn't go through. Sorry,
we had none of that, Mustafa.
Well, mashallah.
No, we did.
Inshallah, I want to go on to the second slide.
There is a raised hand, I think.
Okay.
Someone raised their hand? No?
There's this, to read the part that we post in the chat, or we can?
No, I think someone has a question.
Yeah, it's from Shehrani family. So they're reminding us the magicians that realize the power the Lord has, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power, not the Fir'aun. So they were willing everything from, let me see if I can.
They're trying to unmute.
Okay, let me try if I can do it. Okay. No, the host can do it. I am the co-host.
Who is the host?
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, sorry. A lot of times we can't comment because we have children here and they make lots of noise. We have 5 children, so. But to comment, the comment I wanted to share is, so anyone that knows me, that studied with me, there's one motto that I've derived from studying Sayyid Nursi and the Quran, and that motto is that life is a gift to know ourselves, and regardless of if we're punished in the hereafter, it's a gift for us to know ourselves, and if we're rewarded, it's a gift to know ourselves. So when I think of the illusion of freedom and what the nafs tells us about it, I'm reminded of ayat in the Quran that where people will say, "Oh, just give us one more chance to go back to earth, to go back, and we'll amend our ways. We'll give us a second chance," and the answer will be, "You'll do the same exact thing." So in a sense, Allah knows what I will do. Allah knows whether I will be rewarded with something good or punished. Allah knows that. So life, my experience of life and the illusion of freedom for me is the journey to know who I am. My nafs tells me I have this choice, and it's telling me that I have this choice for the purpose of me learning who I am, and so that in the end, I will know that these are the choices that I made. I learned who I was because I don't already know who I am. So this illusion of freedom is a learning process of who I am. It's not, of course, it's not from the perspective of the Creator, who already knows. So to be just punished or to just be rewarded and not know what the reason behind this, what was the wisdom behind my punishment, would be unjust. And so this whole experience of freedom is that manifestation of justice, the manifestation of knowledge, the manifestation of mercy, even for those that were punished, to know why they were punished. So that's just probably the core of what I usually derive any perspectives from is that statement of life is a gift to know ourselves. It was the big conclusion that I've reached from my study over the years.
Thank you so much, Brother Adam. It was very helpful. Definitely, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, you can continue, but before I mute myself, I just wanted to point out. So I generally join with the whole family here. Some of them are taking naps right now, so today's a special day where we can talk. But my wife is usually here with me also, and she'll sometimes comment also. So she did want me to remind about her comment, but you can continue if you want to read that comment after she wants me to read it. Okay. So
okay. Go ahead, please.
So my wife says, from what I understood, Dr. Yamina Boganaya once taught a group that this point of imaginary rububiyyah in the nafs is the key part to convince that it will be so pleased to turn the one of all power. It is actually the point of need which was created, which is the avenue to the powerful one. So she's emphasizing that that's what she understood, and it's not a direct quote of what Dr. Yamina said. And that this is directly speaking. Is it okay for her to share this? No. Okay. All right. This is directly speaking to the interests of the nafs. It wants power. Where it turns to. Where does it turn to? It has to turn somewhere, as it is never without turning somewhere.
Thank you, brother. It was really helpful for myself to understand the steps that we are following now, because as Brother Adam reminded us, as the child of the century, as the modern man, definitely when I say I want this, I desire this, I don't know who's talking, what is talking, what part of my is talking, what am I really following? So I'm not even capable of analyzing myself in that sense. Thank you so much. This was very helpful. And thank you to the sister.
If I may take it from there, I think, may
Sure.
I? Right? Yeah.
Sure.
The comments are actually going together in the sense that, life is a gift to know myself, and knowing myself is my opportunity to know my Lord. That's why, they say one who knows oneself knows his Lord, the true Lord, because this sense that is put in me, that's hardwired into my being, that seems to be connected primarily with my instinctual soul of owning things, being in charge, being free, being able to manipulate things, etc., that we put all together and call rububiyah, right? Lordship, right? If I did not have that sense as a measure, I would not be able to know the lordship of my Lord. I would be living on a two-dimensional surface, and if people came to me and talked about the third dimension, I would have no idea, right? So an aspect of that third dimension is put in me, and this applies to many other things: my sight, my knowledge, my partial choice, my hearing, etc. An aspect of that is put in me, hardwired into me, so that I can take it and use it as a point of comparison to know about my Lord. So that is my opportunity to know my Lord, and therefore it serves a purpose that's even higher than knowing myself or knowing who I am.
I think that hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Because we are given samples of the divine names or reflections of the divine names in us. And we, in a sense, we are encouraged to take ownership over them so that we can actually familiarize ourselves and normalize them as part of us, so that we can make a comparison. As Ustad Nursi says, if we are able to build something, then we can extrapolate from that, and we can say, well, if I build my own house, then surely this creation must have a master architect, must have a builder. So this ability to create, this ability to build, or the illusion of it at least, is put in us as a kind of necessary fiction. We have to believe that we have the attributes, that we are owners of the attributes, so that we can then disown them and submit them back to their true owner. Unfortunately, if it gets stuck, and if we don't realize, that there is a telos, there is an end game, there is an end point to my illusion of holding on to the names. That is, I have to give them back. If we fail to realize that, then we hold on to those samples, we hold on to the reflection of those names, and we actually come to believe that they are ours and that they stem from us. And that is the danger. If that is not caught at an early stage, then we go on in adult life to believe that we actually are the masters of our own destiny, and we are the owners of our own attributes and perfections. And that is what leads to the nafs thinking that it can do anything it likes.
Thank you. One more reminder in the chat part, Harun Abi wrote, lower soul seeking turning point is an interesting fact. This illustrates that its economy is based on consumption, not on production, at all, weakening other faculties eventually. Interesting point here by Harun Abi. So, inshallah, I want to continue to next slide. Thus, in the month of Ramadan, the instinctual soul of everyone, from the richest to the poorest, may understand that it does not own itself, but is totally owned. it does not own itself, but is totally owned. That it is not free, but is a slave. It understands that if it receives no command, it may not do the simplest and easiest thing. It cannot even stretch out its hand for water. Its imaginary lordship, Rububiyyah, is therefore shattered. It performs its worship and begins to offer thanks, its true duty. So, if we think about the last commands, so here, I guess the biggest mistake of the nafs is not fulfilling the wisdom behind that ability. So there's this imaginary freedom, even he imagines to the extent of Rububiyyah, lordship to himself in his own sphere. But if we don't know what is the purpose behind this, why this is given, and even we don't realize that it is given, we just take it as ours. So kind of we don't fulfill that purpose in a way, right? So at the end, we need to come to a conclusion of being the servant, being owned, being a slave. And this is where the Ramadan is kind of stepping in to help us, to direct us, to guide us in that direction. Colin Hocam, any reflections on this?
Yeah, of course, there has to be something which breaks our heedlessness, just as, during our day, 5 times a day, we are supposed to break the pattern, break the cycle, and go to meet our Lord to reaffirm our promises to him and to reaffirm our servitude to him. Then there has to be some place in the yearly cycle that we break the habits and at least give ourselves the ability to realize that we are, existentially poor and existentially impotent. There has to be a breaking of the cycle, and this Islam does this, very deftly. It breaks the cycle in so many different ways. It breaks the habits, in other words. It pushes us to make hijrah from our general, from our habits. So the hijrah that we make is moving away from our habit and trying to see ourselves, as others see us. And Ramadan is a kind of hijrah because we migrate away from this unthinking, unfeeling, the habitual nature, which makes us do everything without thinking. And it breaks the cycle, it breaks the habit.
Mustafa Hocam, do you want to add?
Yeah. I'm trying to put together a few thoughts. Because the instinctual soul, nafs, is short-sighted, it cannot see straight away that it is not the Lord. It cannot break out of that illusion that it has rububiyyah. And, constantly, as it lives, constantly it actually faces its own limitations, but it also constantly keeps moving direction, and its short-sightedness and heedlessness helps in this, and coming up with excuses and moving on to something else. It wants the grapes, it cannot reach the grapes. It says the grapes are sour and goes for the peanuts on the ground. But now it thinks that it can own and be the lord of the peanuts. And then if there's a problem with the peanuts, it moves on to something else. There will come a time where and when this illusion will be broken for each and every soul, and that is when they taste death, right? When death comes, the game will be over, and it will not be able to move to another target any longer. It will not be able to come up with, more excuses any longer. But because this is its own cycle and it cannot move out of this, it needs to be given opportunities and situations in which it can come face to face with its own limitations, right? Ramadan, in that sense, is a beautiful opportunity that we all need to take advantage of to recognize that illusionary lordship is illusionary. And Ustad put it beautifully there. You in the iftar time, maybe it's a long day, a hot day, you are thirsty, the cup of water is in front of you, you are sitting there, and you cannot stretch out your hand and take the cup and drink. Why? The nafs is, all of us, of course, it starts from our intellect. Rather, there starts a conversation between the intellect and the lower soul. The intellect tells to the lower soul, I know that you want it. If it were left to you, if you were the Lord, if you were the Rabb, right? It would be easy, supposing, it would be easy to stretch out your hand and take it and drink and quench your thirst. But you are not going to do it. You cannot do it because you don't own yourself. Right?
Yeah,
This is the opportunity.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Like at 8:31, everything is haram for you. At 8:32, it's halal. You can't do it, and then you're invited. We have to go forward to the bounties when we're invited to them, and nafs doesn't like that. Nafs doesn't like to wait for invitations. Yeah. Nafs likes to do what it wants when it wants.
And if you don't understand this, huge wisdom behind all these things, it's really sometimes doesn't make sense for the people out there. Why I'm gonna be hungry and thirsty for all these long hours. So only with this it becomes really meaningful for even the nafs, inshallah, at some point. And this it ends with I want to repeat the last statement. It performs its worship and begins to offer thanks, its true duty. So with this, and what Mustafa said, there's a nice summary in the chat part by the Shehrani family, pointing out this truth. We get to taste a bit of power, but then we ultimately experience our inevitable weakness and how we fail again and again, which then becomes our evidence to try to find the real power, since we love power so much. It's so loving that what breaks the imaginary lordship is shukr for all the forms of blessings that it's already receiving. So it's kind of even this thankfulness, this shukr, is only through feeling the weakness and neediness of the nafs then. Otherwise, we just say a plain thank you, but maybe we don't really mean it most of the time. Anything to add regarding this point, Mustafa Hocam or Colin Hocam? Or any of our volunteer speakers, if they want to add anything. We can maybe let
there are two hands that are raised.
Yeah, this time let Mustafa Demir speak if we can. I'm not. Halit Abi, can you let Mustafa Demir speak if can?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I guess we are, go ahead,
sorry.
please.
Oh, sorry. Selamun Aleyküm to everybody
Aleyküm.
participating in this meeting. As breaking fast time is approaching in Istanbul, I want to explain my things in a few minutes. Is my voice coming?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. When we put together instinctual soul without training it to close to imaginary lordship, it causes, it gives birth, it produces tyrannic results as we witnessed in our near past history, as Hitler, and as we witnessed two biggest world war, First World War and Second World War.
So we also have a very limited time, so if you can just make it to the point, yeah, otherwise
in 2 minutes I am summarizing it, I am concluding it.
Please
And
go.
these unlimited and independent thinking oriented some lordship, imaginary lordship thinking to oppression activities. And as you know, in First World War, 20 million people died, and in second one, 70 million died. These are the result of not training or nafs or instinctual soul.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good iftar, inshallah.
You
Thank
too,
Mustafa.
Mustafa.
Very interesting point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
We come to the, okay. Shehran family, if you wanna. Adam abi, go ahead, please.
There's two thoughts that came to mind, and one is one of symbolism and how in Ramadan it's as if you know, the analogy of the nur of Allah and a lamp, and how when we experience the need for our Creator, it's like unveiling or wiping a lamp that we can't see through. And we kind of wipe ourselves away to see the Creator and experience our dependence on the Creator, as His names emanate from the source that is everything that we experience. And kind of a smaller point was kind of a different perspective, was also remembering that the saying that shaitan is chained in this month, and so that we get a sense of, hey, this is really something that I am responsible for, that I am doing. And of course, as was emphasized, we only know ourselves by knowing our Lord. And I think that also, you know, in other months we can say, oh, it was shaitan that tricked me. Oh, we can blame shaitan for it, even though we tried not to take accountability for following the sayings of shaitan. But in this month, it is special because I'm trying to figure out what is so special. Why is this emphasized in Ramadan? Of course, there's staying away from things. There's the food and drink and trying to stay pure and clean and worship and read Quran. But also it's about, the way I see it, those habits that we might have, so that we recognize where are we. And the thanks is also in, oh, this is really who I am. These are things that I'm doing, not shaitan's tricking me. These are things that I've become. And I need to take a step back and realize, in order for me to wipe the lamp clean, I need to correct and amend my ways. So in that sense, it's kind of a way for me to know who I am and what I can do, inshallah, to be close to my Creator and to know my Creator, and to live accordingly, according to what my Creator wishes for me to learn and grow into.
Thank you so much, Adam abi and sister, for the comments. Any closing remarks, Mustafa Hocam or Colin Hocam?
No, I think everything that's been said has been on point.
Thank you so much. Mustafa Hocam, any comments or
Yeah, mashallah. It's just that you know, we, including myself, we all need to try to realize these in ourselves. You know, it's beautiful. Everything that's said is beautiful, but it should not be just said and left there. We need to try to think about it and try to internalize it so that we can actually benefit from Ramadan. Otherwise, it comes and passes and we have a lot of intellectual exercise. But, you know, that's it. We have a lot of intellectual exercise. So inshallah, we should try to internalize all of this and think about those meanings as we fast and, you know, come close to our iftar, and try to observe our nafs as, you know, I think you said, Brother Adam said, you know, this is a really good opportunity to observe where our, you know, nafs is. It is, you know, left alone and with the world, so we can know more about it and perhaps take measures to continue to train it after the Ramadan too, inshallah.
Inshallah. Can we close with the dua, Mustafa, inshallah?
You know, Colin Hocam does that.
Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Oh Lord, please give us the ability and the patience and the knowledge and the acceptance to make the most of Ramadan, which is a break in our cycle of unthinking habit, and give us the ability to internalize this and not waste the opportunity, inshallah.
Thank you so much for all joining us this week. Please keep us in your prayers, and may Allah all make us benefit, get the best out of this whole month. Inshallah, hopefully see you next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.